Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
In the squadron, they called him Bullets, but we call him Greg Kelly. Greg Kelly is on the air
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Security, no tax on overtime. He said this great, big, beautiful bill, frankly, has been the best thing that's ever happened for the workers.
He's about to wrap up. Stay with us.
People. The only thing it does for rich people, it allows them to hire a lot more people. But when I saw him, and then he said it's all up and down the line. This is a place in Georgia, all up and down. Other factories doing different, not only steel products, different. He said every one of us was out of business. We could barely make it. Some of them were down to less than an hour a week. Think of it. 1 hour a week to make just a few little trinkets or whatever they make. Now they're going round the clock. I had it a month ago. I went to Michigan, went to Ford.
What happened? Well, he actually just walked out. He's about to walk out. That's on a bit of a delay, and I know he's just left the room. President Trump. That was wow. It was masterful, and it revealed not only how engaged he is on every aspect of American life and government, how much he cares, and his deep personal disappointment with the decision, and his mastery of the topic and why it was it's astounding. And even in defeat, there can be victory. He kept talking about the dissenting opinion, written by a combination of, let's see here, Kavanaugh, Alito, and who's our guy other there? Thomas, of course. Now, let's see. I want to see what this was all about, because sometimes you read these things and I tell you what, they can move you to tears. They're so beautiful. 6-3 decision. I want to find the dissent. Where the hell is the dissent? Gosh damn it. Where is the dissent? Where is that dissent? Imagine that. It's hard to find, huh? I'll find it. You can't keep the truth away from me. Yeah. And while I get that set up, I will tell you, I've been updating you guys from time to time. This Bill Stevenson thing, my good friend who's sitting in a jail cell in Delaware, accused of murdering his wife, first-degree murder. I do not believe it. I do not believe he harmed her in any way. I am very, very suspicious of political interference in this whole matter. Now, she was found dead in the house. They did not know why she died. I met Linda Stevenson. I met Bill. And I do remember thinking that she did not look healthy. I was like a really kind of almost taken aback by certain things I noticed. But I also noticed that they were happy, and I know that Bill is a great big jolly teddy bear of a guy. He was married to Jill Biden for a short period of time. Jill had an affair with Joe while he was a U.S. Senator. After he lost his wife, we think, he moved in on Jill, getting it on behind Bill's back. And then they get married, or they get divorced. And here's where the weaponization happened. And it totally, this is Joe Biden. This is who he is. Joe Biden says to his girlfriend at the time, Jill, you know what? During this divorce, you should get a piece of the stone balloon. The stone balloon bar which was a cash cow in Wilmington. Bill Stevenson started that place, regular college bar, but it took off and became like a huge concert venue, famous up and down the East Coast. Big acts would perform there, including Bruce Springsteen over the years, and it made a hell of a lot of money. So Bill is like, well, we're getting divorced. What are you going to do? They had an affair. I'll get over it. You know, we're young people. What are you going to do? You want to be with Joe? Go be with Joe. So they work out a deal in the divorce, and it's going to clean Bill out. And Bill is on his way to the courthouse, and he doesn't like it, but he's going to sign it so he can get on with his life. Gets to the courthouse, and he finds out the deal is off. No divorce today because Joe got involved. And Joe said, I'm going to get you a better lawyer, and I'm going to get you a better deal. So this deal is off. Back to the drawing board. Then it's time, okay, they negotiate another deal. That isn't very good to Joe. To my friend Bill. But the judge notices something. And before he signs the whole thing, he does a little bit of math in front of the court. And he says, so let me get this straight. Did you pay for your wife's schooling at the University of Delaware? Yes, I did. Did you provide her housing? Yes, I did. Did you do this? Yes, I did. Did you do that? Yes, I did. Did you buy her a car? Yes, I did. Did you do that? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, by my calculation, she owes you $30,000. And she ain't getting a piece of the stone balloon. That's such a Joe Biden move. He saw that. You know, he was so mad about how little money a U.S. senator made. He would go up and down complaining about it. He complained about it on the Senate floor. And you know when you complain about how little money you have, you know what that is really? It's a signal that you need more money and you want more money and you'll take more money. It's a signal that you're bribable. They call it venality. A venal, V-E-N-A-L, susceptible to a bribe. He was advertising. We make so little money here for the issues that we're handling. The issues, both like billion-dollar budgets. Joe thought he deserved a piece of that. And that's how he became a very rich man. Lyndon Johnson entered the U.S. House of Representatives at the age of, I think he was 39 in 1940. It was before World War II. He was 29 years old. And before that, he had a bunch of state jobs. He had been in government and teacher. And he was in government all the way up until January 20th of 1969 when Lyndon Johnson stepped down from office and Richard Nixon. He died almost exactly 4 years later. He was worth something like $200 million, Lyndon Johnson. How did he get all that money? Well, back in those days, it was a given. Joe Biden was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1972. Lyndon Johnson was still alive. When he was campaigning for that job, the Watergate hadn't even been broken into. J. Edgar Hoover was still the director of the FBI. Things were different back then. Public officials got away with things. There were a lot of reforms that went into effect after 1974, after Watergate. But Joe Biden became a big shot in Delaware when he was 29. And I've seen this before. Famous people, when they hit it big, when a person hits it big, often they'll stop growing intellectually, emotionally. They'll just kind of plateau. And that's what happened to Joe. Didn't get any smarter, didn't get any better. And from that day, November 1972, till really right now, he's the biggest deal in all of Delaware. And he gets what he wants in Delaware. He gets what he wants. So he embarrassed Jill and Joe in that divorce because he got a lot of money. Jill did not get what Joe thought she had coming to her. And it's believed, and I know this, that Joe took revenge on my friend Bill Stevenson. And really the proof of this in my book is 1982. Bill Stevenson is arrested for non-payment of payroll taxes for the first quarter of 1982. I've seen the paperwork. I've seen the indictment. I can't believe it. When you see it, and I try to show this in videos, it's just, it took my breath away. I was like, whoa. Because Bill has explained this to me. Bill he's a great guy, but he's he's a very talkative, and it takes him a long time sometimes to get to the point. But when I saw the paperwork and I broke it down, that Bill Stevenson and his brother were arrested on April 8th, 1982, for failing to pay payroll taxes for the first quarter of 1982. The check was 8 days late, and he gets arrested in federal court. So you would think maybe this was a recurring problem, and he had been, this has been made an issue before. He'd been arrested, and it must have been many, 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 many millions of dollars. You know how much it was? $8,152. He was 8 days late with an $8,152 payment, and they arrested him. That is Joe Biden throwing his weight around Delaware, and I believe he's done it again. This woman drops dead. Nobody knows why. She had a heart condition. We haven't seen the autopsy. We haven't seen the indictment. Monday of last week, my friend Bill is arrested on first-degree murder. We still haven't seen anything. We haven't seen the indictment. There's a Rule 9, and they upped his bail to $2 million. Something is wrong. Something is really, really, really wrong. And I am like, I fear for this guy's life. Let me tell you what I did this week. So he was in not court. He was in some sort of fugazi hearing with a commissioner. I thought you got to see judges. No, he got to see a commissioner. And did he see the commissioner? No, he saw her through Zoom. Isn't COVID over? Why is he seeing a commissioner on Zoom? It was a Zoom. And the public defender said, we are going to enter a plea of not guilty. The public defender. Public defenders, I'm sure, are great. But when they read you your rights, anything you say can and will be used against you in court or law, blah, 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 blah. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. It's not that he can't afford an attorney. He can't get a Delaware attorney. Delaware? Joe Biden owns a state, and people are scared and small. People are scared and small. I don't want any trouble with the Bidens. Screw that guy, and screw his brothers, and screw his sister, and screw that idiot Hunter, too. All of them. This is still America. We have rules, we have a constitution, and you can't throw somebody in jail without revealing the charges. I don't care about your Rule 9 bull. Can't believe it. So this is where it gets even weirder. This week, his public attorney says, we're going to enter a plea of not guilty. Like we are going to. This isn't even a court proceeding. I don't know what the hell it is. He's talking to Commissioner so-and-so. Now, there's an attorney there who is part of the public defender office who's named in the piece. I find this person. I got to Google for about, I find a phone number. I call. Hello, is this, and I don't want to reveal this person's name, but I ask, is this so-and-so? Yes. Hi, this is Greg Kelly, and, I'm in media, and I'm a friend of Bill, and guess what happens? She starts laughing. Starts giggling. And I'm like, is everything okay? It's like, yeah, I knew you'd be calling. Really? Okay. How's Bill? What's going on? Oh, he was fine. Now, I'm not calling the prosecutor. I'm not calling the cops. I'm calling the defense attorney. I'm calling the gosh damn defense attorney. I'm not the adversary. So it was one of the most disturbing and weirdest conversations I've ever had in my life. Now, one thing I did get, she said, well, I'm not going to be the lawyer. It's going to be this guy. And she tells me the name of the guy, Ross Flock or something. She gives me his email address. So I email him. I put in the subject line, Bill Stevenson. I tell him who I am. I tell him my concerns. I tell him, and it's not like 8 pages. It's a paragraph. Please call me at your earliest convenience, blah, blah, blah. Da, 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 da. And I don't think I jumped the gun, but I gave the guy 24 hours and he didn't write back. He's a public defender. I'm Greg Kelly. I'm not, I'm not nobody. I'm not saying I'm a superstar. I'm not saying, and he doesn't write back. And he still hasn't written back. They're trying to railroad this guy. They're trying to kill him. And I can't let that happen. I can't let that happen. And it can't happen in America. Am I biased? Yes. And are people capable of all kinds of crazy things? Absolutely. Does everybody have a dark side? I'm told they do. But it's breaking my heart right now. And it's just happening. It just seems to be happening. And there's the other thing about Delaware, it's a weird, pesky little state. It's smaller than Suffolk County, but it's kind of far away. You know what I mean? It's like further than Philly. It's like too far from New York, too far from Washington for the national reporters to give a damn. Right? It's really a pain to get to. You know what I mean? It's like, it's too far to go for the day. So everyone's blowing it off and they're content to write their little dispatches. Now, I include myself. I got to get my ass down there. All right. I don't know what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to take time off. I'm trying to figure out how to visit them. I'm also in touch with some high caliber real world attorneys that I hope. And you know what? It's tough. Everybody's got to make a living. It's tough to get somebody to drop everything and go to Delaware. You know what I mean? This is how Joe Biden's playing it. I believe this is a Biden operation. I could be wrong, but that's my belief. I've lived a long life. I know what the hell goes on. I know what's up. I know it. I got a pretty keen sense of certain things, and something is totally freaking wrong. And they're trying to kill my friend. I'll be right back.
Greg Kelly.
Let's go, Brandon.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Greg Kelly.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I got a message from my friend Jake. I love Jake. He can cut through all the crap. They're calling it a Trump loss. It is not. Here's what actually happened. The Supreme Court ruled today that the IEEPA, IEEPA, a 1977 emergency law, cannot be used to impose sweeping global tariffs without congressional authorization. Roberts wrote it. Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh dissented like champs. Here's what the left and the media aren't telling you. This is a procedural ruling, not a policy death sentence. The tariffs that actually matter, Section 232, steel and aluminum, Section 301, China-specific, are untouched. Still standing, still working. The White House is not rolling anything back. They're already pivoting to the Trade Act, National Security Authority, and Congress if needed. The left is celebrating like American manufacturing just got handed back to China. It did not. Tariffs protect American jobs. They bring factories home. They punish unfair dumping and force real deals at the table. One procedural setback does not change any of that. We don't lose. We reload. We reload. Ooh. Jake, at Jake Can 72. I love it. And I also love what our friend Kavanaugh actually wrote in writing. He said basically most, if not all, of these tariffs can be imposed, reimposed by another agency or other kind of mechanisms of the federal government. There are all kinds of ways that these things can, okay, you move it out of this emergency 1977 thing, but you put it under, the COTA or the OOTA or the BBOAOMB. There are so many complicated, convoluted rules. You can use one of them, and President Trump and his people will find one of them to put America first. And we're not writing no $179 billion check to anybody. I love it. And today's press conference was a masterclass. All right. We've been talking about the Epstein matter. Nobody knows it like my, I guess I'll call him a colleague right now, Michael Tracy. The guy is absolutely brilliant, and he knows things that nobody else in the world wants to know.
Greg Kelly.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Greg Kelly, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, my name is Shantae Davies, and I'm here before you today as a survivor of decades of pain, the trauma, and betrayal at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and the people who enabled them, and a government that for far too long refused to help.
Oh my God, that sounds so terrible. That sounds so absolutely terrible. Carlos, play the next clip if you don't mind. I mean, the horror, the story that she tells, it is so beyond.
First, I was an excited young woman on top of the world. Epstein flew me to his private island. He listened to my dreams, promised to help, but his promises came with a catch. The abuse began. He told me to keep it secret. He manipulated me with quid pro quo I did not consent to, but I felt I had no one to turn to. He was too powerful.
Doesn't sound at all like she's reading from a script, does it? All right. Now, what is omitted from this is the fact that she was an adult woman at the time of the alleged abuse, and she told a totally different story 10 years ago. But minor details, right? Minor details. It's too much fun to have a hysterical witch hunt. And this stuff is a witch hunt. I think President Trump is right. This stuff is a hoax, a lot of it. Michael Tracy is an unbelievable, just in the best way, incredible, just an amazing independent journalist. And he has been a truth teller on this and so many other issues. He's got a great Substack, and Substack is really where it's at these days, mtracy.net. Michael, welcome back. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm all right. To be honest, I'm getting, you get light years more than I get, but I started, shooting my mouth off about the Epstein stuff, what I know, what I've learned from you, and oh boy, people do not like hearing facts, do they?
No, there's a whole mythology or even ideology that's been built up around this thing, and it is sort of strangely cross-ideological, so it's sort of a distinct issue in that respect. I mean, you can't easily peg it to one or the other partisan pole. Obviously, there is a partisan dimension just in that Trump, as you mentioned, has called it a hoax, or he's been rather dismissive of it, and clearly Democrats have operationalize this issue as like the main opposing narrative to Trump in the second administration. It's sort of the analog of what the Mueller investigation or the Russian collusion stuff was in the first administration. But in terms of the online kind of fever swamps around this, it is quite amazing. I mean, what I always am sort of staggered by is that for one reason or another, people seem incredibly invested in the idea that there really is a ton more systematic, vicious child sex abuse than there actually appears to be. Not that child sex abuse doesn't occur, obviously, but predominantly where it does occur, it's much more run-of-the-mill. It's not some globe-spanning, elite-controlled, covered-up, blackmail-directed kind of sprawling operation that people have theorized, and they've turned it almost into a dogma that for a lot of them can never be falsified, because what do they say? Oh, just because the current batch of Epstein files, quote unquote, don't contain the evidence that we always imagined it to contain, that just means that the cover-up continues, right? So that means it's never going to be falsifiable. But at the same time, though, I mean, I have found that, when you sort of can sit down with somebody or explain things rationally, I have heard from quite a few people who have told me that I've, definitely shifted their perspective to some extent, because a lot of the stuff that people absorb is just kind of folklore. It's like from Netflix. It's just kind of like from the social media churn. They've never really done a deep forensic dive on the source material, which is really necessary on lots of issues, but this one in particular, because otherwise you're just kind of like ingesting these totally faulty characterizations of things that are slanted toward the most incendiary possible depictions.
So I know why people are so invested in the idea of a global child pedophile ring. You want to hear why they're invested?
Sure. Hit me.
Well, the idea that there is that kind of grievous sin happening makes people feel better about the sin in their own lives. For instance, if I'm having an affair, right, and I'm married, I mean, okay, well, but I'm not molesting kids, right? I mean, it makes people feel morally secure in whatever corners they're cutting. That's reprehensible. I actually know this in a weird way, not that I had an affair, but I saw that movie. What's that name of the movie? The Sound of Freedom. Did you see that?
I know of it. I didn't get a chance to see it. Well, that's all about trafficking, guys who, track down children who were trafficking victims or something like that, right?
Right. And it was very powerful. And I came out of that movie like, oh, my God, we got to stop this. And I was beating myself up about a very minor moral quandary I had about something so minor and ridiculous. And I thought to myself, why was I even worried about that? These people are monsters. And it was like an aha moment. I'm like, oh, wow. Anyway, look.
That Sound of Freedom movie, though, I have to say, is a little bit questionable. I've looked into, I think his name is Ballard or something like that, if I'm remembering right. He's sort of the leader of whatever that movement is. I don't know. These guys who proclaim themselves to be professional child sex trafficking saviors, and then they have to like concoct some weird scenario that they then dramatize and, you know, get it ready for the big screen. There's always a little bit something odd going on with that, and it has like some strange sort of religious overtones that are kind of weirdly apocalyptic and paranoid. So anyway.
Well, there's this thing, Somali Mom. Have you ever heard of Somali Mom? Yeah, it was a woman, Cambodian, and she ran around New York City talking about how she was a survivor of sex trafficking, and this is about 15 years ago, and it turned out to be a total fraud. She was raising money. She had event after event, and it was like, oh, wow, Somali Mom, so interesting. And nope, it was all a scam.
Yeah,
so
that Sound of Freedom guy, I read, he had some litigation going from former employees, and eventually it came out in that litigation that he claims that some Mormon prophet transmits to him the locations of these human trafficking victims, and that's how he knows where they are. I mean, come on, give me a break.
Well, then again, look, I cut them some slack too because I haven't gone deep, and you know how these reports can be skewed. You know what I mean? Sure. Once you know something about something, you realize how very little people know anything about anything.
Yeah. Let's just say I'm instinctively skeptical. We'll leave it at that.
Understood. So, Andrew is, you see that picture there, and he's in big trouble, it looks like. But you are, and it has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with Epstein and trade documents and secrets. But you believe, and I think I concur, that this is just a spin-off because they hate Epstein. They hate Andrew over there because of his association with Epstein. That's my sense. Can you put this in context for me and what's really going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a total fallacy to say, oh, this is just about some unremarkable little email excerpt that somebody found in this Epstein files archive, and it could potentially suggest some kind of untoward transmittal of trade information. I mean, that would be so run of the mill that there's zero chance that, absent the connection to the man who is like taken on this almost like metaphysical world historic villain status, Jeffrey Epstein, there's no way that, barring Andrew's connection to this individual who the entire British media and American media and like world media are declaring every 2 seconds is the most notorious pedophile in human history. Barring that, of course, nobody would ever think twice about these formulaic emails, and much less that it would somehow warrant the first arrest criminally of a British royal since like the 17th century. That's crazy. Of course, it's basically fitting some facts to the crime, right? Or like retrofitting a set of facts to impose some kind of punishment, or as like the survivors love to say, quote, accountability on Andrew that, given his association with Epstein. Nobody cares in the abstract about him passing along some trade information. That's not why this is a mass hysteria.
Sure. Hey, can I jump in? Let me ask you this about just overall. And you have documented, and and anybody can know if they look. We're not saying Jeffrey Epstein is a great guy or innocent of everything. He's done some things, but do me a favor. Nobody really understands what he's actually guilty of. Going back to 2008. Can you explain that for everybody? Because there is, there's a myth and then there's reality.
Sure. I will never not be amazed at the following fact, and I swear this is true. For all the mammoth journalistic resources that have been poured into the story over the past, 10, 15 years, a long time now. Netflix, Hulu, New York Times, BBC, podcasts, you name it. Social media, investigators, freelancers. Apparently, I'm the only guy whoever thought it might be a good idea to look at the Florida court docket and check what Jeffrey Epstein actually pleaded guilty to? Like, you can go, there's a transcript of the plea hearing where he enters his guilty plea in Florida, and they spell out what the charges are, who the purported victims are, and, it's on the record, but I've never seen, it's never been reported anywhere. Like, what are people focusing on, if not this? They're focused on all this tangential stuff and this intrigue and, mythological speculation and an intelligence service and a pedo ring. I mean, all this nonsense when we could get down to brass tacks and just understand the parameters of the case legally a little bit better, but nobody ever thought to do it, I guess, until I did, just a few months ago, which, again, just strikes me as astonishing. But, if you go and check that transcript of the plea hearing, because this was pursuant to his federal non-prosecution agreement, right? The feds interceded. Acosta, who was Trump's first labor secretary, he was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida. He intercedes after the Palm Beach police are complaining that they're not satisfied with the way that the state attorneys have sought to resolve the state-level prosecution, right? So the feds intercede. One thing leads to another, convoluted legal story, but eventually a non-prosecution agreement is brokered that requires Epstein to plead guilty to 2 state-level prostitution charges in Florida. Now, that they were prostitution charges is already interesting because nowadays it's very unlikely that a similar scenario, right, would result in anything that would be labeled a prostitution charge, because that's seen as an antiquated term now. It's seen as too derogatory toward the woman or the victim to be labeled a prostitute in any way. So anything that would have been considered commonly to be prostitution in even as recently as the mid to late 2000s is now almost presumptively construed as, quote, trafficking. But
well,
anyway,
it was pretty solicitation of a minor for prostitution, right? Isn't that it?
The exact wording of the statutes is procuring person under 18 for prostitution. And then there was a felony solicitation of prostitution charge that was that was broader. It wasn't specific to any particular victim.
All right, which is bad. Let's face it, that's bad.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's a prostitution charge. My point is always that things need to be kept in proper proportion, and they have to be rationally understood before we make crazy, wild extrapolations, right? So the second charge that was added on at the behest of the feds was this procuring person under 18 for prostitution, right? And that referred to, because it's procuring person, so singular, right? So the person who was cited as the sole minor whom Epstein was ever convicted or adjudicated for procuring for prostitution was a girl who you can find her interviews, you can find her the transcripts of her grand jury testimony. A lot of the stuff came out pretty recently, actually in 2024, because DeSantis in Florida signed a bill that allowed for grand jury material to be released and other materials. And a lot of these quote unquote victims or survivors are let's say questionable, or they're definitely, they'd have an easily discernible financial incentive to embellish or dramatize, et cetera, especially years after the fact. But that's not the case for this girl, actually. She's unusual in that she strikes me as 100% credible, well-adjusted, not at all sort of unhinged or trying to dramatize things. And she, I think, credibly has testified that, Epstein did have sexual intercourse with her, she said, one day before her 18th birthday. Prior to that, she had come 15 times or so, and there was gradually escalating sexual contact. It wasn't always fully sexualized, but, things escalated. But she said it was always consensual. She said he never forced her to do anything, et cetera. Now, people can object to that, fine, and it is statutorily illegal in Florida because Florida has the highest age of consent in the country, which is 18. Now, you can object to that. You can support that. I'm not even really weighing in. I'm normatively on what the age of consent could be. I'm not particularly invested in that subject. I'm just saying that, for all that we've been told about the magnitude of the pedophilic crimes here, or this mass sort of child rape ring that people love to, opine about so confidently, I don't know. The fact pattern just does not match what the actual facts are. Now, there are other allegations against Epstein. There's other stuff that's been swirling in civil litigation and criminal procedures as well. But in terms of like what he was actually convicted of and what is like on the record, that's it. And I just don't think that's been made at all clear to most people who have been following the story.
Very quickly, you are, very much so have been a lone voice, although there are others kind of catching on. Michael Tracy, tell us a little bit about you. Where do you come from? How is it that, you're in this position, which is fantastic? I mean, I love it. I know, and people have been questioning, oh my gosh, who's he paid for? Who's he paid by? We saw that with Piers Morgan. I think you handled it very, very well, both in the moment and online. So just tell us a little bit about, where you come from, where you went to school, and how you got into this kind of work, and how is it that you're so, interestingly independent and unmoved by mobs?
Well, first of all, I wish I was secretly paid by one of these, wealthy, Epstein co-conspirators or something. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I know that's what people assume, but no, of course I'm not paid by anybody to do this. I mean, it actually is just a product of my own just genuine inquiry that I've been doing on my own volition, for better or worse, and then I have just a readership or a following that pays me by and large. So that's it. I'm from New Jersey. Nothing really special. An issue comes along, I find, I guess, every couple of years, where if one is able to delve into the source materials, then your perspective is just radically different than how stuff gets characterized secondhand. So, I'm thinking of like almost the Robert Mueller thing or the Trump-Russia collusion narrative as an example of this, because I was very early on to that as a skeptic. Just because everything that I was seeing in kind of like the evidentiary record did not at all align with some of these grandiose theories that were being kind of, implicated around some kind of collusion thesis. And with the Epstein story, it's funny because, I had intermittently followed it over the years, but when the uproar really broke out over the summer after the FBI and DOJ put out that memo, which really was a dopey memo. I mean, it was like a self-inflicted wound in some ways. But that's when I thought to myself, okay, like I had already had some skeptical intuitions. Like I knew about some of the main claims that were sort of like associated with the story, like this Virginia Roberts Giuffre person who had been essentially discredited and yet didn't seem to like penetrate the popular awareness at all, that like a main plank of the mythology had been.
Listen, Michael, forgive me, man. I'm up against the clock.
Okay, sure.
We could go on for hours, and some of your podcasts do go on for hours, and they are so fascinating. No, it's because it's so rich. I really encourage people to go to mtracy.net, Tracy, Tracey, mtracy.net, and you can sign up for the Substack. You start reading this stuff, you're going to be better informed than basically almost anybody in the fake news. It's really incredible stuff. Michael Tracy, I think you're doing a public service. I know it's hard, but I applaud you for it. Thank you.
I find it invigorating, believe it or not. So
good for you.
It's all good.
Good for you. Michael Tracy, everybody, and we'll be right back.
Greg Kelly.
Let's go, Brandon.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Greg Kelly, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
My problem is with Joe Biden. What he did was right before the divorce trial, he switched his law firms to his old law firm. They bashed me in front of the IRS. They bashed me in front of the Department of Justice. I backed him 100%. And it only took 2.5, 3 years down the road for him to betray me. I could not stand by any longer when she said he's a liar. I don't understand that she does not see that her husband, the President of the United States, is struggling. She's got to do something about this and realize that this is not any good for anybody, and especially the country.
He took on Joe Biden really, really harshly, right? And deservedly so. Joe Biden deserved it. That's Bill Stevenson, the former husband of Jill. And I think that's why he's going through what he's going through right now. Because he was so vocal in 2022, 2023, 2024, and so pro-Trump. And I think it's payback time. We'll see. There is the music. I appreciate it so much. To be continued. Make America great again. Thank you, President Trump, for everything you've done for this country.
Thanks for listening to The Greg Kelly Show. You can hear The Greg Kelly Show weekdays at 12:15 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Rural Americans deserve access to the best our nation has to offer, especially when it comes to health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families' health. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.